What if you woke up tomorrow, turned on the news, and the headline was, "The government has officially stopped paying its foreign debt"? It sounds like something out of a movie, but it's a real-world event called a sovereign default. It's the moment a country has to raise its hands and admit to the entire world, we can't pay back what we owe. This isn't just some number on a spreadsheet. It's a national crisis that can unravel a country's economy and society in a matter of days. So how does a nation even get to this point? And what happens when the financial dominoes start to fall? Today, we're going to break down the anatomy of a sovereign default, looking at real-world examples to understand the devastating chain reaction that follows. The root cause is surprisingly simple. Debt grows faster than the economy. Think of it like this. A government is like a household, but on a massive scale. It has income, which is mainly taxes, and it has expenses, like healthcare, infrastructure, and defense. When its expenses are higher than its income, it runs a deficit. To cover that deficit, it borrows money. The primary way governments borrow is by issuing bonds. A bond is essentially an IOU. You buy a government bond and you're lending the government money. In return, they promise to pay you back the full amount, plus regular interest payments at a future date. It's a system built on trust. Investors, both at home and abroad, buy these bonds because they trust the government will make good on its promise. For a while, this works perfectly fine. As long as the country's economy is growing, tax revenues are healthy, and the government can easily make its interest payments. Borrowing can even be a good thing, fueling investments in projects that help the economy grow even more. But what happens when that growth engine starts to sputter? Imagine the economy slows down, maybe due to a global recession, a trade war, or a domestic crisis. Suddenly, tax revenues plummet. At the same time, people might need more government support, like unemployment benefits, so expenses go up. The government's deficit gets bigger, and it needs to borrow even more money just to stay afloat. This is where the situation gets dangerous. When investors see a country's economy weakening and its debt piling up, they start to get nervous. They begin to question whether the government will actually be able to pay them back. To compensate for this increased risk, they demand higher interest rates on any new bonds they buy. This kicks off a vicious cycle, often called a debt spiral. The government needs to borrow more, but now it's more expensive to do so. The higher interest payments eat up a larger and larger chunk of the budget, leaving less money for essential services. This forces the government to borrow even more, which pushes interest rates higher still. More debt leads to higher interest, which leads to even more debt until the country is trapped. It reaches a point where no one is willing to lend to them at any price. The music stops. The government simply runs out of money to pay its existing bondholders. That's the moment of default. The very first and most immediate shockwave hits the currency. Think about it. A country's currency is a reflection of the world's confidence in its economy. When a government defaults, that confidence evaporates overnight. It's a giant red flag to global investors that says this economy is in deep trouble. What do? They flee. Anyone holding assets in that country's currency, stocks, bonds, even cash in a bank account, tries to sell them as fast as possible and convert the money into a more stable currency, like the US dollar or the euro. This massive sell-off floods the market with the local currency, and basic supply and demand kicks in. With everyone selling and nobody buying, its value crashes. And when we say crash, we mean it. This isn't a gentle decline, it's a free fall. Look at Argentina. During its default in the early 2000s, the peso lost 40% of its value almost overnight. More recently, in 2019, when Lebanon defaulted, the Lebanese pound, which had been stable for decades, went into a tailspin. It lost over 95% of its value on the black market. Imagine your life savings being worth 95% less in a matter of months. In Sri Lanka, the 2022 default caused the rupee to collapse, completely wiping out its value and making it one of the worst performing currencies in the world. A sovereign default isn't just an abstract economic event. It's the precise moment a nation loses the world's trust, and the consequences for its people are immediate and brutal. With the currency in ruins, the next disaster unfolds: hyperinflation. Suddenly, everything that is imported costs a fortune. Remember, international trade is mostly done in stable currencies like the US dollar. So if your local currency is now worthless, the cost of importing essential goods like fuel, medicine, and food skyrockets. A bottle of cooking oil that cost 10 units of your currency last week might cost 100 this week and 1,000 the next. This isn't just an inconvenience, it's a humanitarian crisis. Pharmacies run out of basic medicines. Gas stations have lines that stretch for miles only to run dry. Supermarket shelves become bare. People's salaries, if they're still getting paid, can't keep up. Their savings are vaporized. They can't afford to feed their families. This is what we saw in Venezuela, where prices were doubling every few days, forcing people to carry backpacks full of cash just to buy groceries. This economic chaos quickly cripples the banking system. Banks are often major holders of government bonds. When the government defaults, the value of those bonds plummets. This means the bank's assets are suddenly worth a fraction of what they were, potentially making the bank insolvent. Fearing a total collapse, people rush to the banks to pull out whatever money they have left. This is a bank run. To stop the entire system from imploding, the government is often forced to impose capital controls. They might limit how much cash you can withdraw each day or completely freeze bank accounts. In Greece, during their debt crisis, people were limited to withdrawing just 60 euros a day. In Argentina, the government implemented the infamous corralito, trapping people's life savings in the banking system. This shatters the last remnants of public trust. People can't access their own money, businesses can't make payroll, and the entire economy grinds to a halt. As the formal economy collapses, society begins to break down. Unemployment soars as businesses, unable to get credit or import materials, shut down. Schools close, hospitals run out of supplies, and public safety deteriorates. We saw this tragically in Sri Lanka, where a once middle-income nation with a strong public health system saw its hospitals unable to perform surgeries because they ran out of anesthetic. This creates a desperate situation. People who have lost their jobs, their savings, and their access to basic necessities become angry and hopeless. Mass protests, riots, and social unrest become common. The political leadership that oversaw the collapse loses all legitimacy. This can lead to a complete breakdown of law and order, and in the worst cases, a failed state. A sovereign default isn't just about finance, it's a catalyst that can tear the very fabric of a society apart. So, how does a country recover from this? It's a long, painful road. The first step is usually to go to the lender of last resort, the International Monetary Fund, or IMF. The country has to negotiate a bailout package, but this money comes with very strict conditions. The IMF will demand that the government implement austerity measures. This means deep, painful cuts to public spending, slashing subsidies, firing government workers, and raising taxes. The goal is to get the government's budget back in order and prove to the world that it can be fiscally responsible. At the same time, the country has to renegotiate its debt with its original lenders. This is a complex process where they try to convince bondholders to accept a haircut, meaning they'll get back only a portion of what they were originally owed, or to extend the repayment timelines. This process is grueling. The austerity measures imposed by the IMF often make life even harder for ordinary citizens in the short term, leading to more protests and political instability. Negotiating with thousands of different creditors, from large investment funds to individual bondholders, can take years. But if successful, it marks the beginning of the end of the crisis. It's a slow, arduous process of rebuilding. The country has to reform its economy, fight corruption, and create a stable environment to attract new investment. It has to slowly, piece by piece, win back the trust of its own people and the international community. Recovery is possible, but the scars of a default can last for a generation. It serves as a stark reminder that a nation's credit is its most valuable asset, and losing it can bring a country to its knees. Thank you so much for watching. The dynamics of national debt are incredibly complex, and a default is one of the most extreme events in modern economics. If you found this explanation helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into how our world works. Let us know in the comments which economic topics you'd like to see us cover next.